Every road has a history. Deaths, disappearances, things that happened in the dark that never got explained. Most drivers never think about it. They just turn on their headlights, follow the yellow lines, and trust that the road will take them where they need to go. But what happens when the road has other plans? Case file 011. Now open. 3 drivers. 3 late-night journeys that turned into something else entirely. 3 encounters that prove sometimes the most dangerous thing on the highway isn't the other vehicles. These are their accounts, documented exactly as they happened. No embellishment, no exaggeration. If you make it through to the end, hit that subscribe button, because what happened to these people could happen to anyone behind the wheel after dark, including you. The car behind me had been there for 97 miles. I know the exact number because I'd been watching my odometer, tracking it, trying to convince myself I was imagining things, but I wasn't. This happened in February of 2023. I was driving from Denver to Kansas City for a job interview. 7-hour drive. I'd left around 6 p.m., planning to drive through the night and arrive early morning. The first few hours were fine. Standard interstate driving. Other vehicles passing me passing slower traffic. Normal highway rhythm. Around 11 p.m., traffic thinned out significantly. Eastern Colorado, nothing but empty plains and darkness in every direction. The kind of emptiness where you can drive for 30 minutes without seeing another vehicle. That's when I first noticed the headlights behind me. They appeared in my rearview mirror on a straight stretch of highway. Nothing unusual about that. Someone else driving through the night. But they stayed there. I was cruising at 75, slightly above the speed limit. Most vehicles either passed me or fell behind within a few minutes. These headlights maintained the exact same distance. After 10 miles, I started paying closer attention. I varied my speed, slowed to 65. The headlights stayed the same distance back, accelerated to 85. They matched my speed perfectly, never getting closer, never falling behind. I told myself they were just using me as a pace car. A lot of drivers do that on long highway stretches. Follow someone else's speed to avoid thinking about it. Cruise control makes it easy to maintain distance, but cruise control doesn't adjust when the lead vehicle changes speed, and this vehicle adjusted instantly. Every time I touched my accelerator or brake, those headlights responded immediately. Not a few seconds later, immediately. Like they anticipated my movements. 20 miles became 30. 30 became 40. I switched lanes. They switched lanes. I switched back. They switched back. I tried to see what kind of vehicle it was, but the headlights were too bright, positioned at an angle that made it impossible to see the actual car behind them. Just 2 white circles of light, burning in my rearview mirror, never wavering. At mile 63, I tried something different. An exit ramp appeared ahead. Small town. Gas station visible from the highway. I signaled right. The headlights behind me signaled right. I canceled my signal and stayed on the highway. The headlights behind me canceled their signal. My hand started shaking on the wheel. This wasn't someone using me as a pace car. This was deliberate tracking. Someone was following me, specifically me. I grabbed my phone, keeping one hand on the wheel. Tried to take a photo of the vehicle behind me using my phone's camera. The screen showed only white glare from their headlights. No detail, no license plate, nothing identifiable. I considered my options. I could pull over completely, let them pass, see what they did. But pulling over on an empty highway at midnight with a vehicle deliberately following me seemed like the worst possible choice. I could take an exit, drive into a town, find a police station or busy area, but the exits out here were 15 to 20 miles apart, leading to tiny towns that might not even have a gas station open at this hour. Or I could keep driving, hope they eventually got bored and left. make it to Kansas City where there'd be traffic and people and safety in numbers. I chose to keep driving. Mile 70 passed, mile 80, mile 90. The headlights never varied their distance. Around 1 a.m., I passed a semi-truck in the right lane, pulled back into the right lane ahead of it. The headlights behind me passed the semi, pulled back into the right lane behind me. When the semi was no longer visible in my mirrors, I felt even more isolated. Whatever vehicle was following me had proven they'd follow through traffic, adjust to any situation, maintain pursuit no matter what. At mile 97, something changed. The headlights got brighter, not because they moved closer. They maintained the same distance, but the intensity increased, like they'd switched to high beams. My rearview mirror became almost painful to look at. I had to adjust it to deflect some of the glare. Then they started flashing. On, off, on, off, on, off. Rapid succession. Like they were signaling me. I had no idea what it meant. The flashing continued for maybe 30 seconds, then stopped. Back to normal headlights. Normal distance, normal tracking. Except nothing about this was normal. My gas tank was approaching a quarter full. I'd need to stop soon, regardless of the situation. An exit sign appeared. Rest area, 5 miles. Rest areas usually have other vehicles, truckers sleeping, families taking breaks, maybe even highway patrol. I decided to take it. As I approached the exit, I didn't signal. Waited until the last possible second, then jerked the wheel right and took the ramp. The vehicle behind me reacted instantly, no hesitation. Followed me onto the exit ramp without missing a beat. The rest area came into view. It was completely empty. No semi-trucks, no cars, no people. Just a dark parking lot with a few lights illuminating the bathroom building. I drove slowly through the lot, looking for any signs of life. Nothing. The vehicle behind me entered the rest area and stopped at the entrance. Just stopped. Headlights still on, blocking the exit back to the highway. I pulled into a parking space near the bathrooms, angling my car so I could see the entrance. The vehicle sat there, idling, waiting. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I called 911. 911, what's your emergency? I'm at a rest area on Interstate 70, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. A vehicle has been following me for almost 100 miles. They're blocking the exit now. I don't feel safe. Are you in immediate danger? Has anyone approached you or threatened you? No, but, sir, following someone on a highway isn't illegal, unless they're threatening you or blocking you from leaving. There's not much we can do. Are they preventing you from driving away? I looked at the entrance. The vehicle was blocking the exit ramp back to the highway. But there was another exit, a back entrance to the rest area that connected to a frontage road. There's another way out, I admitted. Then I'd suggest taking that route. If the vehicle follows you and continues pursuing you, call us back and we'll dispatch an officer to your location. But right now, this doesn't meet the threshold for immediate dispatch. I wanted to argue, wanted to explain that this wasn't just someone driving behind me. This was calculated stalking, but I knew how it sounded. Okay, I said. I'll take the other exit. I hung up and stared at the vehicle blocking the highway ramp. For the first time, I noticed something. The headlights were positioned slightly wrong, too high off the ground for a normal car, too far apart. This was a larger vehicle, SUV or truck, but I still couldn't see any detail beyond the lights. I started my engine, backed out of the parking space, and drove toward the back exit. The vehicle at the entrance didn't move. As I approached the back exit, I watched my rearview mirror. The vehicle turned around, started driving through the rest area toward me. I accelerated, took the back exit onto the frontage road. The frontage road ran parallel to the highway for about 2 miles before an on-ramp appeared. I drove fast, checking my mirror constantly. The headlights emerged from the rest area behind me, maintaining distance, following. I took the on-ramp back to the highway. Accelerating hard, the headlights followed, and we were back where we started. Interstate 70, empty highway, middle of the night. One vehicle following another with mechanical precision. Mile 103, mile 110, mile 120. My fuel gauge dropped below 1/8 of a tank. I couldn't drive much further without stopping for gas. An exit appeared. Lyman, gas food lodging. Lyman was a small town, but it was on the interstate. There'd be 24-hour gas stations, probably other vehicles. Witnesses. I took the exit. The vehicle behind me took the exit. The town was mostly dark at 2 a.m. I saw a gas station ahead with lights on. I pulled in, parking directly under the canopy lights, next to the pump closest to the building. The vehicle behind me pulled in, parking at the far end of the lot, headlights still aimed at my car. I sat there for a moment, hand on the door handle, trying to decide what to do. The gas station attendant was visible through the window. Young guy, maybe early 20s, reading something on his phone. There was one other vehicle in the lot, an 18-wheeler parked near the building. I got out of my car, keeping my eyes on the vehicle at the far end of the lot. The driver's door opened. My heart stopped. A person got out. Male, average height, wearing dark clothing. He stood there beside his vehicle, facing me, not moving. I couldn't see his face clearly because of the distance and lighting, but I could see his posture, the way he stood. Relaxed, patient, like he had all the time in the world. I quickly started the pump, stuck the nozzle in my tank, and walked briskly toward the gas station entrance. The attendant looked up as I entered. "You okay, man?" he asked. "You look shaken up." "Someone's been following me," I said quickly. "For over 100 miles. That vehicle at the end of your lot. They've been tracking me since Colorado." He looked out the window at the parked vehicle. "You want me to go talk to them?" "No," I said immediately. "Don't approach them. Just maybe keep an eye on things. I'm going to get my gas and get back on the highway. Maybe with witnesses around, they'll stop following me." He nodded slowly. "I can call the cops if you want." "I already tried that. They said there's nothing they can do unless the person threatens me directly." "That's messed up," he muttered. I stayed in the gas station until my pump clicked off. Watching through the window, the person beside the dark vehicle hadn't moved, just stood there, watching my car. I walked back out, replaced the nozzle, got in my car, and started the engine. The person got back in their vehicle. I pulled out of the gas station, heading back toward the highway entrance. The vehicle followed me out of the lot, back on the interstate. Same distance behind me, same relentless tracking. Mile 130, mile 140. Dawn was starting to break on the horizon, the darkness gradually giving way to gray twilight. As the sky lightened, I could finally see the vehicle behind me more clearly. Dark blue SUV, older model, tinted windows, no front license plate. I tried to memorize every detail in case I needed to describe it later. At mile 153, traffic started increasing. Morning commuters heading into Kansas City, semi-trucks making deliveries, normal rush hour building. The SUV behind me maintained its position despite the increasing traffic. When other vehicles merged between us, it would maneuver around them, re-establishing the same following distance. Mile 160, mile 170. Kansas City skyline appeared on the horizon. I'd made it. The city meant traffic, witnesses, police presence, places to go where I wouldn't be isolated. As I entered the city limits, I started seeing police vehicles. I considered pulling over next to one, flagging them down, explaining the situation. But what would I say? Someone had followed me on a public highway, hadn't threatened me, hadn't done anything illegal? I kept driving. My interview was at 9 a.m. The office building was downtown. I took surface streets toward downtown, making random turns, trying to lose the SUV. It followed every turn. Red lights, lane changes, roundabouts. Nothing worked. Finally, I pulled into the parking garage under the building where my interview was scheduled. The SUV followed me into the garage. I drove down to the third sublevel, where there were multiple other vehicles, and parked in a space surrounded by other cars. The SUV parked 2 spaces away. I sat in my car, doors locked, watching the SUV in my mirror. The driver didn't get out. We sat there for 5 minutes, then 10. Neither of us moving. Finally, I grabbed my interview portfolio, opened my door, and got out quickly. I walked briskly toward the elevator, constantly glancing back. The SUV's driver door opened. A man got out. Tall, maybe 6'2". Dark jacket, jeans, baseball cap pulled low. He started walking toward me. I ran to the elevator, jabbed the button repeatedly. The doors opened immediately, thank God, and I jumped inside, hitting the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, I saw him, standing 10 feet away, staring directly at me. Face still partially obscured by the cap, but I could see his mouth. He was smiling. The elevator doors closed. I rode up to the ground floor, found building security, and reported that someone had followed me into the garage and was acting threateningly. Security sent 2 guards down to investigate. They returned 15 minutes later. "There's no one matching that description in the garage," one of them said. "We checked every level, found a dark blue SUV where you said, but it's empty. No one inside or nearby." "Check the license plate," I insisted. "There's no plate," he said. "Front or back, completely removed. We've notified the parking management to have it towed." I somehow made it through my interview. I have no memory of what I said or how I performed. Afterward, security escorted me back to my car. The blue SUV was gone. I drove home to Denver that same day, taking a completely different route, stopping frequently at busy rest areas, constantly checking my mirrors. No one followed me. I never found out who was in that SUV or why they followed me for over 200 miles. The police couldn't do anything without a license plate or clear threat. Building security never found the driver, and I never took that highway route again. The town looked perfect. That should have been my first warning. This happened in September of 2022. I was driving from Albuquerque to Oklahoma City, taking back roads because I had time and wanted to see the landscape. The interstate is faster, but the 2-lane highways show you America that the big roads skip over. Small towns, local diners, places that haven't changed much in 50 years. I'd been driving for about 6 hours, making good time, when I realized I needed gas. My tank was down to less than a quarter, and I was in rural Texas Panhandle. Not a lot of options out here. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the flat landscape. A green highway sign appeared. Ashford, 2 miles, gas, food, lodging. Perfect timing. I took the exit, following a 2-lane road that curved through empty grassland toward a cluster of lights in the distance. As I got closer, the town materialized out of the twilight. Classic small-town layout. Main street running through the center. Storefronts on both sides. Residential streets branching off. Church steeple visible above the buildings. A welcome sign at the town limits read, "Welcome to Ashford. Population 3,847. Founded 1891. The streetlights were just coming on, creating warm pools of light along the main drag. Store windows glowed. Neon signs flickered to life. Everything looked operational, active, normal. I drove slowly down Main Street, looking for a gas station. Past a hardware store with its lights on, a diner with the "Open" sign illuminated, a drugstore, a movie theater with current films listed on the marquee. but something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. Then I realized I hadn't seen a single person. No one walking on the sidewalks, no one visible in the store windows, no one driving, no one anywhere. There were vehicles parked along the street, at least a dozen cars in the visible blocks, but no people. I told myself it was a small town at dinner time. Everyone was probably home eating. A gas station appeared on the right, old-fashioned design with 2 pumps under an awning. All the lights were on. The price sign showed current rates. I pulled up to a pump and got out. The evening air was still warm. Quiet, except for the hum of the gas station's lights. I tried the pump. It activated normally, prompting me to select my payment method. I swiped my card, started filling my tank, and looked around while the gas pumped. The station's convenience store lights were on. I could see the interior clearly through the windows. Shelves stocked with products, coffee maker with a fresh pot, hot dog rollers turning with food on them, but no clerk behind the counter. The pump clicked off, tank full. I replaced the nozzle and walked to the station door. A bell chimed when I opened it. "Hello," I called out. No response. The store was immaculate, everything perfectly organized. The coffee smelled fresh. The hot dogs looked recently cooked, but there was no one there. I walked to the counter, looking for a bell to ring or a door to a back room. The cash register was on, the drawer slightly open, money visible inside. "Hello?" I tried again, louder this time. Nothing. This was strange. I walked back outside, got in my car, and decided to try the diner I'd seen on Main Street. Maybe someone there could explain what was going on. I drove the 2 blocks back to the diner and parked directly in front. Through the large windows, I could see the interior clearly. Tables set with silverware and napkins, menus standing upright in holders, food on several tables, plates with partially eaten meals. Steam rose from a cup of coffee at the counter. But again, no people. I got out and tried the diner door. Unlocked. I pushed it open, and a bell above the door announced my entrance. "Hello?" I called. "Anyone here?" The diner was warm, smelled like coffee and grilled food. A television mounted in the corner was on, playing the evening news. I walked between the tables, looking at the abandoned meals. A burger with 1 bite taken out of it. Fries still hot enough to steam slightly. A milkshake half finished. At one booth, a child's coloring book lay open with crayons scattered around it. The page showed a partially colored picture. Blue sky at the top, green grass at the bottom, a house in the middle still uncolored. Like someone had put down the crayon mid-stroke and vanished. I pushed through the kitchen door. The grill was on, food cooking. Nothing burning. Someone had been tending it recently. A pot of soup simmered on the stove, but the kitchen was empty. I turned off the grill, not wanting anything to burn, and went back to the dining area. My heart was starting to race now. This wasn't normal. An entire town doesn't just disappear. I pulled out my phone to try calling someone, maybe emergency services, but I had no signal. 0 bars. I tried anyway. The call failed immediately. I left the diner and stood on the sidewalk, looking up and down Main Street. Every business had its lights on. Every building looked occupied, but there were no people anywhere. I walked to the next storefront, a drugstore, door unlocked, lights on, products on shelves, pharmacy counter unmanned. The hardware store next door, same thing. A barber shop, cape still draped over the chair, scissors on the counter, hair clippings fresh on the floor. I checked 6 different businesses. All of them showed signs of recent activity, all of them completely abandoned. I returned to my car and sat there, trying to think rationally. Maybe there was an emergency evacuation, tornado warning, chemical spill, something that would make everyone leave immediately. But evacuations don't happen in seconds. People don't leave food, cooking, and money in registers. And where was the evacuation alert? No sirens, no announcements, no emergency vehicles. I decided to drive through the residential area, see if anyone was home. I turned off Main Street onto a side road lined with houses, porch lights on, living room lights visible through windows, cars in driveways, but no movement, no people. I stopped in front of a house with its front door standing open. I got out and approached cautiously. "Hello," I called from the sidewalk. "Is anyone home? I'm just passing through and trying to figure out what's going on." No response. I walked up to the open door and looked inside. Television on in the living room, toys scattered on the floor, a jacket draped over the back of a couch. Hello? I didn't go inside. Something about entering someone's home uninvited felt like crossing a line, even in these circumstances. I went back to my car and drove through more residential streets. Every house showed signs of occupancy. Every house was empty. I circled back to Main Street, starting to feel genuine panic now. The sun had fully set. The streetlights provided the only illumination, and I was apparently the only person in an entire town. I needed to leave, get back on the highway, find help, report this to someone. I drove to the edge of town, following the road I'd used to enter. The welcome sign appeared in my headlights, except now I was seeing the back of it, which read, "Come back soon." I passed it and continued on the two-lane road, heading toward where I knew the highway should be. After about a mile, I saw lights ahead. The town. I was approaching the welcome sign again, from the same direction. That wasn't possible. I'd driven straight, hadn't turned. The road didn't curve. But somehow, I was back at the town entrance. I drove through again, faster this time, and continued out the other side. 2 miles down the road, the welcome sign. Again. I tried turning around, going back the way I'd originally come from. Same result. No matter which direction I drove out of town, I ended up approaching it again from the same entrance. The town was looping. I pulled over on the roadside, hands shaking, and tried to think. This couldn't be real. Roads don't loop like that. Geography doesn't work that way. I checked my GPS. It showed me on a road between Amarillo and Oklahoma City. No town nearby. Nothing called Ashford in this area. But when I looked up, I could see the town lights clearly. Half a mile ahead. Exactly where it had been. I sat there for maybe 20 minutes, trying different things. Called emergency services, no signal. Tried the GPS navigation, kept trying to route me through roads that didn't match what I was seeing. Attempted to use my phone's compass. It spun erratically without settling on a direction. Finally, I decided to try a different approach. I drove back into town, parked on Main Street, and started systematically searching for anyone or anything that might explain this. The town hall was a 3-story brick building at the center of town. I went inside, lights on throughout, offices with desks and computers, filing cabinets open, water cooler still bubbling. No people. I found the mayor's office on the 2nd floor. The desk had papers spread across it, some kind of meeting agenda dated today. A coffee mug sat next to the papers, still warm to the touch. I searched the desk drawers, looking for anything that might help. Found typical office supplies, files about town business, budget documents, meeting minutes. Nothing unusual. Then, in the bottom drawer, I found a folder labeled Transit Protocol. I opened it. Inside were strange documents, not typical town paperwork. Schedules showing times and dates going back years. Lists of numbers I didn't understand. Maps of the town with certain buildings marked. And a single-page document with a header that read, Visitor Protocol. I read it carefully. It was instructions. In the event a visitor enters during transit phase, The following procedures must be observed. 1. Do not interact with the visitor. 2. The visitor will be unable to exit town boundaries during transit phase. 3. Transit phase duration, approximately 4 hours. 4. Upon transit phase completion, visitor will be released automatically. 5. Visitor memories of transit phase should naturally become unclear within 72 hours. 6. Do not attempt to explain transit phase to visitor. Allow natural confusion to occur. I stared at the document. Transit phase. What did that mean? I looked at the schedule in the folder. Today's date was there, with a time listed, 6:47 p.m. to 10:47 p.m., transit phase. I checked my watch. 9:23 p.m. According to this document, whatever was happening would end in about an hour and a half. I didn't understand any of this. Where had the people gone? What was transit phase? I searched the rest of the office, finding nothing else helpful. I went back to my car and drove to the church, the largest building in town. Maybe there'd be answers there. The church doors were unlocked, interior lit by soft overhead lights, pews empty, altar undisturbed, everything peaceful and quiet. I sat in a pew near the back, exhausted and confused, and decided to wait. If the document was right, this would end at 10:47. At exactly 10:47 p.m., something changed. I felt it before I saw or heard anything. A subtle shift in the air, a change in pressure, like the atmosphere itself adjusted. I walked outside. The town looked exactly the same. Lights on, streets empty. But something was different. I got in my car and drove to the edge of town, past the welcome sign, down the road. This time, I didn't loop back. The road continued straight, leading into darkness, away from the town lights. After 2 miles, I saw the highway, the actual highway, with other vehicles, heading in both directions. I merged onto it, hands still shaking, and drove for an hour before stopping at a rest area. I tried to report what had happened to a state trooper parked there. He listened patiently. "Ashford?" he repeated when I finished. "There's no town called Ashford anywhere near here. You sure that was the name?" I saw the sign, I insisted. Population 3,047. Founded 1891. He pulled up something on his phone, showed me the screen. "There was a town called Ashford in this area," he said, "but it was abandoned in 1952. Some kind of mass relocation for a government project. Town was demolished in 1954. Nothing there now, but empty land." "I was just there," I said. Everything was intact, operational, just no people. "You feeling okay?" he asked, concern in his voice. "Sometimes long drives at night can cause fatigue hallucinations. Maybe you should rest here for a while before continuing." I didn't argue. What could I say that wouldn't make me sound insane? I drove the rest of the way to Oklahoma City, arrived before dawn, and collapsed into a hotel bed. The next day, I tried to retrace my route, found the exit I'd taken, drove down the 2-lane road. There was no town, just empty grassland stretching to the horizon. No buildings, no roads, except the one I was on. No welcome sign, nothing. I stood there in the daylight, staring at the empty landscape, trying to reconcile what I'd experienced with what I was seeing now. And I noticed something. In the dirt beside the road, there was a marker, historical marker. Weathered metal plaque on a post. It read, "Site of Ashford, Texas, founded 1891. Population at peak, 3,847, relocated 1952, demolished 1954. Exact fate of residents remains classified." I got back in my car and left. I've never driven that route again. And I've never figured out what transit phase means. I started this evening with the ordinary goal of reaching a quiet cabin before night fully settled in. The highway was clear, the radio was quiet, and the map on my tablet looked trustworthy. the kind you follow with a sense of inevitability. 45 minutes in, I noticed something odd. The exit sign ahead flickered, then swiveled on its post as if it had a mind of its own. The halo of light around it grew, and for just a moment, the letters rearranged themselves into a direction I didn't recognize. I told myself it was fatigue, that the tablet sometimes misreads in low temperatures, that I should just keep going. But the sensation wouldn't leave. The curve ahead didn't match the route I'd planned. The GPS chimed again, recalibrating to a new path that placed me somewhere I'd never been. An expanse of highway that seemed to contract as I moved forward. I pressed on, hoping to reach civilization, hoping someone could offer a rational explanation. Instead, the landscape grew unfamiliar. The miles stretched too long, and the earth beneath the tires felt colder, as though the world itself was listening. A mile past the supposed exit, a lay-by appeared. It wasn't on the map, yet the car slid into it as if drawn by gravity. The air smelled of rain that hadn't fallen yet. My breath fogged the windshield, and the glass misted with a pattern that looked almost like a map of the night itself. Ahead, a road sign marked a junction I hadn't seen before. The letters looked hand-painted. The arrows pointed both ways at once. Then the tablet changed. A new line appeared. Transit phase. I knew, from nowhere, that time would bend here, and no amount of planning would alter what came next. Without warning, the signage changed again. The exit I'd aimed for was gone. The road continued into darkness where nothing should, by logic, exist. Minutes stretched into something else. The clock crawled forward. The GPS refused to stabilize. And the world beyond the windshield became black and gray, broken only by distant lights that might have been cities or mirages. Then, as abruptly as it began, the motion stopped. A junction stood ahead, like a gateway, leading nowhere. Left, a narrow path into a thicket. Right, a road swallowed by trees. Every instinct told me to turn back, to abandon the search, to choose the obvious exit. I went forward, because sometimes the only choice left is to test what the night means. When the trees finally parted, I arrived somewhere no map had ever prepared me for. The sky carried a strange hue, something between an ending and a beginning. A highway sign stood in the distance. Familiar, promising, yet the path it indicated was sealed by silent trees. That's when I understood. The night had chosen me as a traveler, and like so many before me, I was expected to walk without a map until dawn. Dawn eventually came. The world tilted back toward normal, but the memory stayed. A night where exits refused to exist, where the road refused to end, and where the mind traveled farther than the body ever could. That's all I can tell you about the exit that wasn't there. The rest lives in the quiet between metered breaths, behind the fence of ordinary perception. The exit that wasn't there remains a line drawn in the dark, between maps and memory. If you found this tale, subscribe, and hit the bell for more true-life road nightmares. And remember, some routes vanish not to mislead you, but to remind you that the road you think you know may be hiding something else entirely.